So this morning, I get the honor of welcoming Rashid Nuri, who is a powerful burning bush who is inviting us to think in a different way about food security and food sustainability and about the myriad ways that it impacts our life. He had a powerful revelation while a student at Harvard, and that experience set him on a global food odyssey, managing agricultural operations throughout the US and 35 countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Rashid has seen up close the abuses and inefficiencies of big agriculture, and his vision of community food sovereignty and food equity emerged with full clarity, which I'm so excited we get to talk about in a little bit. He brought that vision to Atlanta in 2006, founding Truly Living Well Center for National Urban Agriculture. Truly Living Well became Atlanta's premier urban agricultural organization, growing tons of chemical-free, nutritious food, providing jobs, and educating communities about food nutrition and self-sufficiency. Now, as the CEO of the Nuri Group, Rashid is working to expand equitable access to the tools for success in urban centers through education, funding, partnerships, and appropriate regulations for urban agriculture. Rashid is also the author of Growing Out Loud, Journey of a Food Revolutionary, which chronicles his journeys, the failing state of the food supply, and offers guidance for the new food movement. Welcome, Rashid. I'm so honored to have this conversation with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Greetings, everybody.
Yes.
One correction is the Truly Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Not national?
No, the work is national, but the emphasis is on natural. We tried to follow nature as much as possible as the exemplar of how it should be done. Nice.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your burning bush moment. Like what drove you originally to begin in this whole lifelong journey?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, that is the earliest inklings I had. No, let me rephrase that. As I look back over my life, I realized the earliest inklings I had of the work that I was going to do was I was in high school and I was running for student body president. And I put to usually those are popularity contests. And I put together a list of 10 things that I wanted to accomplish if and when elected as the president. And one of those was to install a fresh fruit and juice machine on campus put next to the sodas and the candy.
Nice.
And that was back in 1965.
Wow.
Yeah. So from there, then I had a friend, Brother Randy, we called him, who actually turned me on to agriculture. I went to college twice. So the second time I was in the library writing a paper on theory and practice, comparing the work of Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya and Julius Nyerere in Tanzania. These are two men who, I was interested in the men and the women who created the post-colonial world, who led the post-colonial world, Asia and Africa. And those two men had a very different approaches to their development. Nyerere was African socialism. Jomo Kenyatta was straight up capitalism. Tom and Mboya, so I had an interest in health and nutrition coming in. And I was trying to decide, studying nation building, I was trying to decide that I knew I needed a practical skill. I was trying to decide if I wanted to be a printer for communications, books, magazines, and so forth, or carpenters to build. Had no idea. But I read a sentence in this book by Tom Mboya, who was the finance minister in Kenya. And he said, with all the technology available in the world today, there's no reason we couldn't chemically synthesize enough food to feed all the people. And it was like, boom, right then. And what was interesting about it, you know, for many, many years, I said it was like a suit of clothes came out of the sky and turned me towards the agriculture. But now I realize that was God speaking in my ear. And the instruction was to learn everything about food from the seed to the table and to do it experientially. And that's how my journey began, the real journey.
I love that, because that you said that from the seed to the table, because I was looking on your website and it talked about that God moment where you felt the specific call to do this work as a ministry and as a vocation. So incredibly powerful.
Well,
so go ahead.
No, I was going to say it really was. Particularly I look back because, you know, the path has just been straight. I've done nothing else but food and agriculture for well over 50 years. So
I was going to ask this at the end, but actually I'm going to jump right in right here and ask it. A question that I was asked to pose is, what was your experience with food growing up? Was there plenty? Did you live in a food desert? What was your relationship with food?
It's a good question, and I'll answer. But first, let me adjust one thing. I really don't like the term food desert as something that's a term that was introduced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And food desert, immediately you say a food desert, it puts a color on it. You think of Black and brown people living in neighborhoods, the only food they're going to get is from the computerized places like McDonald's or KFC, right, or that banana and apple that you get at a gas station. When the real issue is one of education, economics, why folks in those neighborhoods do not have access to quality food. The truth of the matter is, here in Atlanta, we know we have a north-south divide. Folks on the south side previously wanted to get some good food. They have to take a bus and a train. Yes. Sister have to carry her children with her to get it. Folks on the north side, the white folks, could jump in their Lexus and their Mercedes and drive. The distance to the quality food is exactly the same. So that term food desert, it's really one of the terms that young people have come up with is food apartheid. Right, because it's a design. It's the way it's created. There are no grocery stores in many communities. Okay, and it has nothing to do with the people who live there don't have the economics to be able to support it. And this is why food self-sufficiency and food sovereignty becomes so important. Now, to your question, I come from what I describe as a upper lower class family. We didn't have the reason that we wasn't just poor is that my stepfather was a military man, so we had access to a commissary, medical facilities, housing, which made it a lot easier for us. You know, my mother, God rest her soul, was not a great cook, but we ate. We had food. When the peanut butter and jelly was my standard lunch that I took to school. Cereals in the morning, Raisin Bran is what I liked at that time. Some of that's because I didn't know much else. And if there was some meatloaf left over from Sunday, to get a meatloaf sandwich on Mondays was really cool. No, did not really have I'm quintessential city boy. So it wasn't like we had farms that I could go to my grandfather's farm. We were all city people. My father from New York. My stepfather was from Mississippi via Indianapolis. And all them folk from Mississippi trying to get as far away from farms they possibly could, the ones that had gone north. Right. So that was part, my mother called me her educated farmer. So we really had no connection to soil. All of this was something that came to me and I got involved with in the course of my life.
All right. So So tell us, like, how did you get involved? I mean, you talked about this moment where you were inspired. Where did you go from there with that?
Well, I still had some time left in school. Uh, I could have gone, I took all the pre-med courses. I've always told my children, and I've always been involved taking math and science every year, some variation, some form of it. So although my degree was in political science, government is what they call it at Harvard, I still had all the science background, which enabled me to go down the street. I was asking folks at Harvard, the counselors there, where do I do? Where do I go to school? None of them could talk to me about agriculture because that's just not what you do at one of those Eastern intellectual institutions. They teach you how to read, write, and think, which is a good thing, but nothing practical. Particularly, people think of Harvard as however they think of it, but it's really the graduate schools is where you learn your skills: law school, medical school, engineering, all those kinds. Undergraduate, they teach you how to think, how to read, do a little research. So I went, because I had the science background, pre-med background, I went to the University of Massachusetts to their ag school and took a degree in plant and soil science.
Oh, wow.
So the idea there was that I wanted to at least understand the nomenclature of agriculture, parts of a plant, how you break down the soil. But I knew going in that I was interested in organic agriculture. That had already been established. So after getting that basic grounding in the science of agriculture, I had to quickly unlearn most of what they taught me because it was antithetical to what it is that I was truly interested in.
All right. So you talk about going on a global food odyssey and managing operations throughout the US and 35 countries. So what was that like, and what did you discover in that odyssey?
Oh, life. Got to see local food economies all over the world. And it was a process. I knew I wanted to live and work in Africa. And it took many years before I could get there. When I made that decision in the early 70s, it took until the late 80s before I actually got there. So it was a 15, 17-year process. But what's really been part of the blessing, and God has blessed me in so many ways. I'm very grateful just to wake up every morning.
Yeah.
That each step, it was progress. First thing I did out of school was community gardens, very much similar in urban farms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very similar to what I've done here in Atlanta with Truly Living Well. From there, I went, this was out in San Diego. I helped put in the first community gardens. I worked with children in schools. We had a farm right there in the middle of the city. From there, I came south for the first time. And that was 1975. Went down to South Georgia and ran the farms that were owned by the Nation of Islam. And we had 13,000 acres of land, 4,200 acre farm in South Georgia, and then two farms, 4,000 and 5,000 acres over in Alabama. So at a very young age, actually, I literally learned to swim in the deep end of the pool. So coming down here to run those farms, that was way over my head. But it was, to have an opportunity to be responsible for that much land in my mid 20s was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a progress. From there, I went over to Louisiana, worked with Father McKnight, the Southern Cooperative Development Fund, worked with Black co-ops throughout the 8 Black Belt states in the South. So I got to see how folks were doing. You told me you from Mississippi, your people are. So I got to go over there into the Black Belt. And, people understand not only is the soil Black, but the people were Black who were doing farming over that way, and got to see that. Then I built a farm in St. Landry Parish in Louisiana. This was based in Louisiana. from there, what I do next? When I finished up the work I could do over there, you know, and all this stuff, the politics involved, and all of this, it's in my book if you want to get into the details. I went to Minnesota. And managed a rose garden. We had 30,000 rose bushes under glass up there in the Twin Cities, and just god awful cold up there. And while I was there, you know, I knew I needed to. After that, I needed to learn how food is moved around the world, and Cargill is headquartered there. So I went and started talking to them. They usually like to hire people right out of school so they can be properly indoctrinated. But I convinced them to hire me, took a huge pay cut, and I was 10 years older than all the rest of the young people that they had brought in. They don't like to have people come in and bring in outside influences. They want, at least back in that time, they wanted to properly indoctrinate you in Cargill culture. And they sent me to Gainesville here in Georgia. They were initially concerned sending a young black man down here in the South to run that. I ran that soybean processing plant up in Gainesville, Hall County. But I knew a lot of the people that we dealt with from my experience down in South Georgia.
Right.
From years before. So I got along quite well there, but that gave me an opportunity to begin to see how big ag works, how the soybean processing works. Finally, after several years, I convinced them that they wanted to, when I came into the company, I told them I wanted to go to Africa. And so I had to prove myself. And they first sent me out to Asia, part of the training process. And that was I spent 3 years based in Singapore, and then traveled all over Southeast Asia, all of the non-communist nations. I did work in South Africa, in Asia. And that was just eye-opening to be able to see how people live, how they produce their food, how they grow their food. The 3 years that I was based in Singapore, the longest I ever stayed was 2.5 weeks, during one holiday season. I had 2 passports. So I'd leave one passport in the embassy to get a visa and travel on the other one and then come back and switch up. So 3 years, just all over. Philippines, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I got to see all of that. And see how people in other parts of the world live. You begin to learn that Americans have such a myopic view of the world because we have the 2 largest bodies of water on either side of us. And we think that most Americans think that English is the only proper language in the world. And the culture has been built upon that. I use the term myopia, thinking that the U.S., think about it, when you were in school, every world map that you had in your classroom had America right in the middle, okay?
That's true.
And the world is round, so there's no way to have a middle, but how we were trained is that America, United States, is the center of the world. And then we had maps that distorted the relationship. Europe was, you look at most of those maps that we had, I can't recall names them, but Europe looked big, almost as big as Africa, when in fact it's not. Africa is humongous, okay? But that's the kinds of distortions that have been created for us. So for me to be able to see all the different ways that people approach their food, how it's grown. Indonesia was my favorite place in Asia. I never knew there were so many different shades of green as you see when you get there. Just amazing how lush and green that is, and people growing rice and corn up on the slopes of volcanoes, some of them that were alive. Just really amazing. So I got to, after that, towards the end of it, still kept asking about going to Africa. So I went over to Nigeria and wrote a book on how to enter the markets in Nigeria. And got a chance to do that. So we called it greenfielding. Cargill did not have a presence there, but I was able to build one. So we traded maize, sorghum, cotton, cocoa, cacao, and immediately became the largest grain traders in the country. And that was just a great experience.
Wow.
So I could continue with the rest of the life, but you got a question?
Yeah. So, so actually jumping off from there, in your book, Growing Out Loud, you talk about how there is a food uprising happening in America, and that we live under a commercial food system that is broken and beyond repair, and it demands replacement. So tell us what you see needs to happen there. How's the system broken beyond repair?
Well,
and what do you see are the solutions?
Yeah, that's a many hour conversation. But just basically, we've created a agricultural system that is based upon oil, chemicals. The food is going chemical. We kill the soil. Soil, all life, all wealth, all health begins and ends with the soil. And we've lost that process. The details, just give you one example. After the end of the Second World War, which was very profitable for big business in this country, the munitions manufacturers needed some place to be able to continue to sell and make money. So what they did is took that ammonium nitrate, which is what gunpowder is, and gave it to the farmers to put it on their corn out in the fields. Okay, you're holding your face. Yeah, people don't realize that was I mean, there's been the level of abstraction we could discuss on this is huge. This country, it's ironic. This country, economics in the world is based upon, for the last 120 years, has been based on oil and oil production and who controls the oil. All the products that are used for big ag are oil-based. And here today, you got folks paying other people, yesterday anyway. The oil market dropped so low that these oil producers had to pay folks to take the oil. Isn't that amazing?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. So and I heard a few weeks ago on NPR, some of the big corn farmers up in the Midwest were upset with Monsanto and the other chemical companies for the dicamba that they were putting out there. So when you have big ag complaining to big ag about the products that they've been given, that was a clear sign to me that system is broke and what we're going to do. And you got how else is it broken? Here you got this pandemic is a disaster for this country. It's going to change the economic, but there's so many good things that are coming out of it. The folks that have food to sell are the small farms and urban agriculture. Big ag is not able to feed it, can't move the food. Okay, when you have food that's the average food that people have been eating has traveled 1,500, 2,000 miles to get to the table. It makes no sense. You know, humankind used to live within walking distance of where their food was produced. Okay, that world has not existed for a long time, but we're trying to get back to it. I mean, I think this is what the creation of a local food economy has done. Now, we used to call it a local food movement, but we're past that now. The paradigm has shifted. And what's necessary is to bring more support to the local food economy. And one of the ways that I'd like to see it done, the solutions that I have, is that we need more support to urban agriculture. That money that Sonny Perdue just announced last Friday is going to go to ag. All that money is going to big ag. Even if they're going to give bags of food to people coming from the big distributors, and they're not dealing with the folks on the local level who actually can grow the food. Science has demonstrated, and again, I will acknowledge you can get a report out of university supporting just about any any topic you want to. Okay. That having been said, the organic agriculture is just as productive as the big ag, perhaps even, I would argue, even more so. And they husband the land and husband and the farms and the environment in ways that big ag doesn't.
Right.
So how America became the richest agricultural production area in the history of mankind is because the American people decided that agriculture is what they're going to do. How that happened? Within 48 days in 1862, there were decisions that were made collectively that made America great in that sense. And I'll tell you what those are. The first was the establishment of the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture was the first subject matter department. Today you got energy, housing, health. You can go through the whole transportation. You can go through the list of all the subject matter departments. But the university, the USDA was the very first one, and Lincoln called it the People's House. Then you had the Homestead Act.
Right.
The Homestead Act gave away free land, supported land to people primarily from Northern Europe to come to this country to grow food. They paid them to come, gave them free land. Now, the process also displaced the Native Americans. I don't want to misunderstand that aspect of it. It was multifaceted what the reasons were, but they gave land to folks. Then after that, there was the Morrill Act. And they've had several of them, but the one in 1862 established the land grant colleges across the country. They gave 30,000 acres of land to the states and they could do whatever they wanted to. But the idea was to come up with institutions where they wanted to sell the land, keep it however, farm it, whatever. That was the government gave this land to the states to establish the land grant colleges. So the reason that big ag does no research, they have no R&D, it's all done at the university. When I started in this business, it took a broiler to grow a broiler chicken took 10 to 12 weeks. Now they get them out in 6 weeks. You know, that's right. Wow. 6 weeks to grow a chicken that you find in your grocery store. Who did that research? How was that developed? It was done at the university. The chicken companies don't have to do that research. Even the equipment that they use is done, that research is done at the university. So that's a subsidy. Here we're hearing subsidies all through the agricultural sector. And the final thing was the Railroad Act. Now they were trying to get a railroad to go out to California was part of it. But it was that rail line that was able to bring the equipment from the east, the steel mills, the factories in the east, out to the Midwest in the West where the farmers were. That was a fiasco in the South because they got 1 to 2 miles on either side of the railroad track and got to keep all that land and just send a bill to an invoice to the Congress and they got paid. They stole a lot of money, stole a lot of land, worked the Chinese as like slaves. They were slaves, basically, wage slaves. Excuse me. But those are the institutions that helped to make America's agriculture great. All of it subsidized by the government. So my proposal is to create a new Homestead Act for small farms and urban agriculture, all right? So that we can have the same kind of support to create small farms. People, 80%, 82% of Americans live in urban areas. And we have, Atlanta is really blessed. It's the greenest city in America by virtue of trees and open space. We got enough land in the metropolitan area to grow all the fruits and vegetables we need to feed everybody here. Not meats and grain. That has to be done in the country. But fruits and vegetables can be grown if there was the will and the support to get that done. So I like, they've done.
That's quite a statement. That Atlanta has enough green space to grow all the fruits and vegetables needed to support the people here.
Metropolitan Atlanta, not just Atlanta proper, but the metro area.
Metro.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to see that done. I call them, if we can just get 5%, over the last, that number's even gone up even more now, because they come up with another 19 billion on Friday. So over the last 2 years, it's more than $75 billion that's being given to support big ag. And if we can just get 5% of that to come to small farms and urban agriculture, that would be several $billions. That would it's about $3.5 billion that could go to help grow food right here in the city. So over the time that I've been able to watch and participated and in many ways lead the development of agriculture here in the city, don't misunderstand me. Let me be clear. But all of it's by God's grace, number one. Number two, I haven't done all this work myself. There are a lot of people that are involved, but I know that Truly Living Well and the work that we've done has provided some guidance and directions. We have been able to show people the potential and the possibilities of what's out there. So go ahead, please.
I was going to say, so since you mentioned Truly Living Well, can you share with my congregation a little bit about what Truly Living Well is and some of the core aspects of that community?
Yes, ma'am. And that, I stepped down I'm still the founder, but I stepped down as the CEO of Truly Living Well a couple of years ago on my 70th birthday. And Truly Living Well, we started off as an LLC trying to make money, but we evolved into a training and education center. That's why it was the Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, where we were training. So many of the people who are engaged in urban agriculture today have benefited from the classes, the teachings, the training that took place at Truly Living Well. We use food production as the foundation and the base for all of the training programs that we had. We had class, you can have a 2-hour class on a Saturday. We've done just about every way you can do. We've had training classes of up to 6 months. And we've worked with the Food Well Alliance is the biggest funder of agriculture. And every year they have a soil festival. I mean, nobody was composting. I can't use absolute terms, excuse me. Very few people were even interested in compost when I got here. And my mantra was compost, compost, compost. So now the Food Well Alliance has their soil festival where they're teaching compost and distributing compost every year at Truly Living Well. And they've been doing that now, I guess it's about the 5th or the 6th year that's been going on. So that's what we've done. We just trained people and showed people how to do this work. And have touched, excuse me, really sneeze, have been able to train people.
Bless you.
If I did that in public, boy, people would freak out, wouldn't they?
I know.
But I'm here in the comfort of my own library. So we've been the trailblazers. That has been my work, is to show people the way. And, Daniel Boone showed people how to come through the Cumberland Gap to be able to get out in the Ohio River Valley. And he was never a governor, senator, mayor, nothing. He just showed people how to get out there to the west, to get over those mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that, in a lot of ways, that's been the work that I have done and that Truly Living Well has been involved in. That makes sense?
Yes. And where are the farms located?
Well, they've slimmed down. The headquarters was in East Point. And over the years, we probably have had 12, 13 different sites. But now it's basically narrowed down to the main site. 2 times we have built the largest farm in metropolitan Atlanta. Okay.
Wow.
First was down in the old 4th Ward.
Mm-hmm.
It was 6 acres there. And the farm now is over in College Town. And that farm is over 7 acres. Right here in the city. And on the farm, most of downtown, it was both raised beds and in the ground. In College Town, they raised beds, the old housing project. Soil, the dirt there, you couldn't grow anything. So what was really significant about the move from old 4th Ward to the West End is that we took all the dirt, all the trees, and brought them over. 125 fruit trees we transplanted, and one at a time, bringing it to the West End and brought all
Wow.
the dirt from those raised beds.
Wow.
It took 5.5 years to build that soil and to build all that compost. They had the largest composting operation in town. And there wasn't any way I was going to leave all of that material. So we brought that over. And so it made it an instant farm.
Right, because you've talked about how important the soil is and how much our soil has been degraded over time.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. So there wasn't no way in the world I was going to. The honest truth. One day I was sitting underneath one of those trees out there on the farm. I said, whoever came up with this idea of moving this dirt and trees was stark raving mad. And I had to laugh because I was talking about me. Even consider it costs a lot of money to do that, but there's no way in the world I was going to leave all that dirt, all that soil.
So staying with the soil, you've said that in the new food movement, in order to have a viable community, you must be able to feed, clothe, and shelter your people, and that all health, all wealth, all life comes from the soil.
Absolutely.
Explain that.
All right. Go back to the beginning of the statement. It's no longer a movement. The paradigm has shifted. We have created a local food economy, and that's represented by all the farmers markets. You had trouble finding a farmers market back in 2006. Now there's one every day somewhere.
Yes.
And they're selling food at the train stations through the community farmers markets. But everything begins, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I mean, that phrase comes from because you start with the soil. Everything you have, you pick up a telephone, all the parts in there the materials that make up that phone originate in the earth. So everything we have in these, as I said, this past century has been very much an oil-centered economies that have been developed around us. We're fighting all these wars of who's going to control the oil, who's going to control the land. In Africa, the Chinese and the Arabs are buying up so much of the land in there. The U.S. has started the Africa Command to control the resources that find there. The clothes that we wear come from the earth. The food that we eat comes from the earth. The books are printed from the trees that come from the earth. Everything begins and ends with the soil. And that's if we can begin to grasp that concept, that would help us to have a greater respect for the land and the resources that are around us. And people are beginning to do that. I mean, they're well into the process of doing that. And that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At my kids' school, they now compost all the food from lunch, and they try and have a no waste Wednesday where you only take what you're going to eat and you bring reusable containers and all of those different things. Well, so it is definitely.
Yes, ma'am. That's the one. And part of the wonder for me is being able to see this evolution happen. That a lot of that work was started with Georgia Organics.
Right.
They began this farm to school program. They give out the Golden Radish Awards. And that's an organization, I spent 7 years with them on the board. And able to did the best by God's grace again and make a contribution through that. So to see these schools, the school gardens everywhere. Captain Planet is trying to have 500 schools with gardens in them. And several of the people that worked Captain Planet putting in the school gardens were trained at Truly Living Well. So to see all the folks, I call them to a large extent my children, out doing this work around the town, it's very, very satisfying to see that. I've always said I wanted my epitaph to say he made a contribution. And
without a doubt you have.
Yeah. But again, I do the best I can to keep the ego under control. It was God's grace, because not many people can have had the opportunity to go to school, learn a subject, and then spend their life doing that work. And that's
no, absolutely. And that's exactly why I wanted folks to hear a little bit about your life journey to understand the context of this work that you've done.
Yes,
in the background. So you were talking about Georgia Organics, and on your Truly Living Well website, you talk about food produced without GMS and petrochemicals.
GMO.
And the farmer, huh?
GMO.
Oh my gosh, GMO, sorry. Genetically modified
organisms. Yes.
Organisms, thank you.
Yeah, but here's the joke. Here's the joke about that. See, the scientists think that, you know, GMO stands for God move over. They're trying to recreate, disassemble, and then put it back, and they can do a better job than God does. And that's just absurd.
Yep, it is. We have one creator, yes, and that creator has done a magnificent job.
I can't argue with it. I'm still in awe. You know, I love it when people get a chance to, though not many people, since so many people live in cities, they don't really get a view of all the stars that are out there. You got to get out where there's no light, be able to look up and see how immense and magnificent the creation is, the universe is. It's just amazing.
It is.
And, you know, the picture, and those who haven't had that opportunity, just go look at pictures from the Hubble and just see all that stuff that's out there. Oh, man.
Yes.
And we think, I had a friend, actually my ex-wife was talking about one of her aunties, and she said, Auntie says, there can't be anybody out there in outer space. He said, beside that, if they were, they came here to Earth, we have to teach them everything. If they came here from outer space, we'd have to teach them everything, you know.
Right.
People miss it.
Yeah. So, so my question was,
Sorry.
It's all right, but we're talking about the food that y'all produce at Truly Living Well being produced without GMOs and without petrochemicals. Are you gradually shifting to 100% organic, or is that too cumbersome?
No. That food we produce there is beyond organic. It's past organic, because organic agriculture, USDA certified organic, is a patented phrase that you have to pay to buy. Right? Yep. They have certain standards. Now, if you're going to have a choice in what you're going to grow, what you're going to eat, get the organic certification food. But it's not best, because there's so many loopholes in that law that if you can't find certain inputs, then you can use the regular stuff, what other people have been using, the chemicals. So the food that I grew was beyond organic. It was all natural. We had we would use both compost that had animal waste in it as well as vegan compost. But that's all we used. I never used any chemicals out there. Everything was natural. I didn't use any hybrid seed. Definitely no GMO seed, but not even the hybrids. That's another class what hybridization is. So yeah, it was beyond organic. We just use nature as our example. I wanted to test the quality of the people. Some of the students say, well, we want to send our soil to the University of Georgia and get them to test it for us. So you don't need to. I guarantee you it's good. Well, we got to do it. We got to say, all right, go ahead and send it up there. And the university, this is one example from, they did that. The University of Georgia thinks that organic material at 1% to 2% of organic material in the soil is good. And ours was 8 to 9%. Okay, when they did
wow.
That. So, you know, if you look outside, I'm looking out my window over here and see all those trees. I got these beautiful oak trees, all different kinds of oak trees, magnificent. But there's nobody doing any soil tests out there. There's nobody putting any fertilizer out there. The trees grow, they drop the leaves break down, feed the tree, and that's the wheel of life, the wheel of health that's out there. And so when I say, we call it the Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, that's the natural meaning that I meant. I want to emulate nature as much as I possibly can, because that's the example of what works. Everybody, many people in the city, you walk down the street, asphalt, concrete, and you'll see grass and weeds and dandelions growing up.
Yep.
And they want to talk to me about, worried about the earth. Earth gonna be fine. It's humans that are not gonna be fine if we don't mend our ways. But the earth, Mother Nature is powerful creator.
Absolutely. So just to kind of circle back around, at St. Luke's, we actually have, we call it the mustard seed garden.
Mm-hmm.
We have a raised garden bed where we grow some vegetables. And all of those vegetables that we grow and tend to are then used in what's called Clyde's Kitchen, which is a ministry to our neighbors experiencing homelessness, so that they get fresh vegetables grown from the garden immediately behind the kitchen where it'll be prepared, and then next to the tables where they will eat it.
I consulted with St. Luke's way back.
What?
I consulted with the church on those gardens back in the day.
Wonderful.
Long before you were there. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, long before I was there. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So what do you see as the way that the movement can continue to grow? I mean, I see, well, nope, you said not a movement, economy.
Local food,
local food economy. How can we continue to support that and develop it even further? I think I heard you talk a little bit about that earlier in terms of the relief packages, and if we could get some support for the local food economy.
But in order to move it ahead at a rapid pace, it's going to need support. All agriculture in this country is subsidized. All agriculture is subsidized. The farmers could not, it wouldn't work without the subsidies. This is one example. So much of our food is imported from California. People don't understand. California has no water, period. It really doesn't. All the water that's used to grow that food is imported from Colorado River up north. And without that subsidy, which is paid for by the taxpayers of the United States, you wouldn't have any food out in California. It's a desert. So we need that support. All education and all agriculture is supported. So this is why in the building of Truly Living Well, at one point we had as many as 35 employees. And I could only do that with subsidies that came from the philanthropic community here in Atlanta. If it was just growing food, there only been 3 or 4 of us out there that were doing the work. We got it done.
Right.
We would not been able to afford those trainees and all the other folks that came through there, because in a large extent they get in the way of trying to actually get stuff done. So the answer to your question, how to help here, that's the global. Old political cliche is think global but act local. All right. Yeah. So to see all these farmers markets that have come up, all the children in the school with their gardens, all the farmers markets that are developed around, the restaurants that are buying food directly from the farmers. These are all efforts that are supportive of the development of the local food economy, and that's got to continue. One of the things that this pandemic has done is provided a macro shift in many people's thinking about food. Because part of the thing we have to consider, is food self-sufficiency, food sovereignty. Who controls your food? If I control your food, I control you. So by the work that's going on, all these folks, they're running out of seeds. They don't have enough seeds in the store to help people. All the plants at Lowe's and Home Depot and other outlets for seedlings are they're selling out, because people begin to say, wow, I can't go to the store to get food. Okay, what am I going to do? Let me put some in the ground. So that's very rewarding and satisfying for me, because this is what I've been telling people for decades. Grow where you are. Plant in your backyard, front yard, your patio, your balcony, the kitchen window. Just put some seeds in the ground and grow something. Even if it's just some culinary herbs, that's still going to contribute to your health, because you know there's no chemicals on them. But just wherever you are, do something. And
it also contributes to your mental well-being too.
one of the things, yes, ma'am, and how I explain it is this way. If you see somebody, you call them flighty, you say because they're not well grounded. Well, go put your hands and your feet on the soil and you will be grounded. Really that simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Rashid, it was so wonderful to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Can I do this?
Yes, please do.
That's my book, Growing Out Loud. If you go to my website, which is the Nuri Group, my last name, the Nuri Group.com. You can buy it there. If you buy it on the web, from the website, then I can give you a signed copy. Or you can go to Amazon and they'll send it to you.
Okay. Will you put it up closer to the camera so everybody can see really well? Yep. Perfect. A little bit.
Can you see it?
Yep. I see it. And we will also put a link to your website in our newsletter, in our Shepherd's Notes, so that folks can get to it directly.
And if I can, any email you get from me has a little caption on it that says, simply service that measures success. That's a statement that George Washington Carver made, and it's become part of my life credo. So your folks are welcome to email me, Rashid@thenurigroup.com. My phone number, 404-520-8331. That's on the website, which is at thenurigroup.com. Whatever I can do to help, I'm here to provide service. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well,
it has truly been a pleasure.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And let me know what I can do to help you.
All right.